always told myself that paranoia was a side effect of working nights. The night it happened, rain hammered against the windows like it was trying to get in. I was alone in a small rental house on the edge of a coastal city, the kind of place where the streetlights were few and far between, and the sound of the waves mixed with the wind. I had my laptop open on the kitchen table, charts and numbers glowing on the screen, a cold mug of coffee sitting beside me. It was past midnight, the kind of hour where your mind starts playing tricks on you. I remember the silence between the thunder. The house felt too quiet. No cars, no neighbors, just the rain, the wind, and the soft hum of the fridge behind me. I had my headphones in, one ear only, so I could still hear if anything happened. Old habit. You learn to stay alert when you work nights. The first thing I noticed was the door. I got up to refill my coffee and glanced at the hallway that led to the front door. The door had a small frosted glass panel near the top, so I could always see if it was closed or not by the faint line of light it cast on the floor. I froze when I realized that line of light was wider than usual. The door was slightly open. Not much, just a few centimeters, but I knew with absolute certainty that I had locked it earlier. I always did. It was a ritual. Close the door, twist the lock, pull twice, listen for the click. I could replay the memory in my head. I knew I had locked it. I walked slowly to the door, my bare feet sticking slightly to the cold floor. My heart started beating faster, but I told myself it was nothing. Maybe I hadn't shut it properly. Maybe the wind had pushed it open. The storm outside howled as if to agree with that explanation. I closed the door and locked it again, turning the deadbolt until it couldn't go any further. I shook the handle to be sure. Solid, secure. I stood there for a second, staring at the wood, trying to push down the unease rising in my chest. You're tired, I told myself. Long day, long night, too much caffeine. I went back to the kitchen and sat down again. The glow of the laptop felt comforting, familiar. I put both hands back on the keyboard and forced myself to focus on the charts. The rain grew louder, or at least it felt that way. The wind whistled around the corners of the house, making the walls creak. Maybe 15 minutes passed, maybe less. That was when I noticed the glass. My coffee mug was where I left it, but the small glass of water I always kept next to my laptop wasn't. It was about 20 centimeters to the right. Not much, but enough that the ring of condensation it had left on the table was now clearly visible in front of me, empty and accusing. I stared at it, my hands hovering above the keyboard. I hadn't moved it. I would have remembered. I remembered everything on nights like this. Every candle I blew out, every light I turned off, every object I touched. I looked around the kitchen slowly, scanning each corner, each shadow. Nothing. Just the same cramped counters, the fridge humming, the old microwave with the slightly cracked display. I told myself I was being stupid. Maybe I nudged the glass without noticing. Maybe I moved it when I got up to check the door and didn't pay attention. I tried to rationalize it, but my body wasn't convinced. I could feel the tension building in my shoulders, the tightness in my chest. My instincts whispered that something was wrong. I went to the sink, turned on the tap, and let the water run for a second. The sound was oddly comforting. I washed the glass, maybe just to have an excuse to stand up and move. The rain outside came in waves, heavy, then light, like someone playing with the volume. I put the glass back next to the laptop, exactly where I always placed it. I sat down again, telling myself I would laugh at this tomorrow. I never did. The next strange thing was the sound. It was faint at first, buried under the noise of the rain and wind. A soft, wet rhythm. At first, I thought it was just water dripping somewhere. Maybe a leak in the roof or a clogged gutter. I tried to ignore it, but it kept going. A slow, irregular pattern. Not quite a drip, more like footsteps. I paused the music in my one headphone and listened carefully. Wet footsteps on hardwood. Not loud, but clear. Somewhere above me. I looked up at the ceiling. The rental house had a low attic space, accessible through a small hatch in the hallway ceiling. I hadn't opened it once since moving in. I never had any reason to. No storage boxes, no old furniture, just a dark, cramped space that I assumed was empty. The sound came again. One step, then another. Slow, measured. I stood up, my chair scraping lightly against the floor. The sound stopped. The silence that followed was so complete it buzzed in my ears. The only noises were the storm outside and my own breathing. "Hello?" I said, hating how uncertain my voice sounded. No answer. I walked down the hallway slowly, every step feeling heavier than it should. The lights flickered for a moment as the storm rumbled above, then steadied again. The hatch to the attic was a small square in the ceiling near the bedroom door. I stopped beneath it and listened. Nothing. I stared at the hatch. The paint around it was old and cracked. The metal latch was slightly rusted. It didn't look like it had been touched in a long time. I tried to convince myself that the sound had been something else. Maybe the wind had shifted something on the roof. Maybe an animal had run across it. I stood there in the hallway, my heart pounding, and decided not to open the hatch. I didn't want to know, not right then. I wasn't armed, I was alone, and the storm was getting worse. If there was someone in the attic, opening that hatch in the middle of the night would put me in the worst possible position. I told myself I was being logical. I would call the landlord in the morning, let someone else deal with it. I turned to head back to the kitchen. That was when I heard the phone. A soft, muffled notification sound came from somewhere in the house. Not my phone. Mine was on the table next to the laptop, screen facing up, silent mode on. I knew that sound wasn't from any of my devices. It was too far away, barely audible, like it was behind a wall or under the floor. I froze again. Another notification, the same tone, short and sharp. The sound was coming from above me. My mind raced. If someone was in the attic, they had a phone, and it wasn't silent. That meant they weren't worried about being heard. Or worse, they didn't know I was here. Or they did, and they didn't care. The storm outside roared, shaking the windows. A flash of lightning turned the hallway white for a split second, followed by a deep, rolling thunder that seemed to vibrate through the walls. I backed slowly toward the kitchen, never taking my eyes off the ceiling. I grabbed my phone and unlocked it with shaking hands. I thought about calling the police, but I hesitated. What would I say? I think there's someone in my attic because I heard wet footsteps and a phone notification. It sounded insane even in my own head. I checked the time. 1:23 a.m. Another notification from above. Then a faint, almost invisible vibration through the ceiling, like someone shifting their weight. I turned off the kitchen light and stood in the dark, letting my eyes adjust. Maybe I could see something through the windows. Maybe there was a car parked outside that I didn't recognize. Maybe anything that could confirm I wasn't imagining all of this. I moved to the window and carefully pulled the curtain back, just a little. Outside, the street was almost empty. Rain blurred everything, turning the world into streaks of gray and yellow light. No cars parked close, no figures standing in the rain, just an empty street and the occasional flash of lightning in the distance. I let the curtain fall back into place, my mind spinning. I felt trapped. Whoever was up there had the advantage. They had height, hiding spots, and time. I had a kitchen knife block and a phone. The thought hit me then, cold and heavy. What if they hadn't just arrived? What if they had been here for a while? I slowly looked around the house, really looked, replaying the last few days in my mind. The weird little things I had brushed off as forgetfulness, the misplaced keys I found on the counter instead of the hook, the bathroom door left slightly open when I was sure I had shut it. The feeling, a couple of nights ago, that someone was watching me from the dark as I moved from room to room. What if they had been in the attic the whole time? Another notification, a soft thump. Something shifted above, closer to the hallway now. I made a decision. I wasn't going to wait. I grabbed the largest knife from the block, feeling stupid and terrified at the same time, and walked back toward the hallway. I kept my back against the wall, moving slowly. The shadows seemed deeper now, the air colder. I stood beneath the attic hatch again. Up close, I noticed something I somehow hadn't seen earlier. Just at the edge of the hatch, near the frame, there were faint, dark smudges, streaks that looked like dirt or maybe mold, except they weren't in the shape of random lines. They looked like the marks left by fingers. Wet fingers. I swallowed hard, my throat suddenly dry. Lightning flashed again, and the shadows shifted across the ceiling. For a second, I thought I saw the hatch vibrate slightly, like someone had touched it from the other side. That broke something in me. The part of my brain that wanted to be rational gave way to the part that wanted to survive. I stepped back, then turned and went straight to the bedroom. I locked the door, shoved the small dresser against it as quietly as I could, and climbed out through the window onto the narrow strip of wet grass outside. The cold rain hit me like a wall, soaking me instantly, but I didn't care. I backed away from the house, my bare feet slipping in the mud. From the backyard, I could see the roof more clearly. The attic had a small, rectangular ventilation opening near the top, covered by a thin metal grate. In the darkness and rain, it took me a moment to realize what I was seeing. The grate was slightly bent outward, like it had been forced from the inside, and behind it, just for a moment, I could swear I saw the faint glow of light, a phone screen. I turned and ran, knife still in hand, not stopping until I reached the main road where the streetlights were brighter and the houses stood closer together. I called the police from there, my voice shaking as I tried to explain what was happening. They arrived faster than I expected, maybe because my panic was obvious over the phone. 2 officers drove me back to the house. The rain had calmed a little by then, reduced to a steady drizzle. The front door was still locked, the windows were intact. From the outside, the house looked completely normal. 1 officer stayed with me while the other went inside, gun drawn, and checked room by room. Then he positioned a chair under the attic hatch and pushed it open with the barrel of his weapon. He pointed his flashlight into the darkness and climbed up. It felt like an eternity before he spoke. "You need to see this," he called down. The other officer told me to stay put, but I could see the look on his face when he came back down. It wasn't the calm, bored look of someone responding to a false alarm. It was tight, controlled, and serious. Inside the attic, the air was thick and dusty. The beam of the flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing just how much space there really was up here. It was larger than I thought, stretching across the length of the house. In the far corner, behind a wooden beam, was a nest. That's the only way I can describe it. An old mattress lay on the floor, stained and sagging. Next to it were fast food wrappers, empty water bottles, and a pile of clothes that weren't mine. A small backpack lay half unzipped, with a phone charger cable dangling out of it. On the mattress, there was a cheap smartphone, the screen still lit up with notification icons, messages, missed calls. Beside the mattress, there were other things that made my skin crawl. A small pile of photographs torn from what looked like my social media, screenshots printed out and scattered. One of them showed me at the kitchen table, working late, the soft glow of the laptop on my face. Another showed me standing by the window, looking out at the street. The angle was wrong for those pictures to have been taken from outside. They were from above, from the attic hatch, or through that small ventilation opening, zoomed in and watched over time. On the floor, near the edge of the nest, was the glass. Not my current one, but another just like it. The landlord had told me the house came with a full set of dishes. Apparently, one hadn't been missing, it had just been relocated. The officer picked up a small notebook from the floor. He flipped through it briefly, his jaw tightening. I caught a glimpse of pages filled with cramped handwriting. My name appeared on several of them. So did my schedule. Times I usually worked, when I left, when I came back. Notes like, up late again, and forgot to close curtain today. The realization hit me in a slow, suffocating wave. This person hadn't just been hiding here for a night or two. They had been living above me, listening, watching, studying my routines, my habits, my weaknesses. The police searched the attic and the rest of the house thoroughly, but they didn't find anyone. The only evidence of the intruder's presence was the nest, the phone, and the scattered proof of their obsession with me. They told me it looked like the person had left recently, maybe when they heard the sirens or when I ran out into the yard. For weeks after that, I replayed every little strange moment I had brushed off, every misplaced item, every creak in the night, every time I thought I saw a shadow move when there was nothing there. I realized how easily I had ignored my instincts in favor of rational explanations, how quickly I had told myself that I was overreacting. I moved out of that house within days. I didn't even pack everything. I took what I could fit in my car and left the rest. The landlord was upset until the police showed him the attic. After that, he stopped calling. I still live in the same city, but I never look at it the same way. Every new place I move into, I check the attic, the basement, every closet, every crawl space. I lock my doors and check them twice, 3 times, sometimes more. I pay attention to the small things now. A moved object, a strange sound, a light that's on when it shouldn't be. People tell me it's just trauma, that the chances of something like that happening again are tiny. They talk about probabilities and statistics, like that's supposed to make me feel better. But I know something they don't. I know what it feels like to sit in what you think is the safety of your home while someone lives just above your head, listening to your every move. I know what it's like to hear footsteps that don't belong to you, to realize that the feeling of being watched wasn't just in your imagination. They never found the person who lived in that attic, not once, not a single clear lead. The phone had no SIM card, the notebook had no name, just notes about me. The clothes and belongings were generic, bought cheap, untraceable. Sometimes late at night when the rain starts to fall and the house creaks with the wind, I catch myself staring at the ceiling, listening for footsteps. And every time I move into a new place, I ask myself the same question. What if, right now, as I sit here, someone is already up there, lying still in the dark, listening to me breathe and waiting for me to ignore the signs again?